This is my video on legal and ethical issues to do with sports science research. BASES are the British Association of Sport and Exercise Science. They are the body which control sport and exercise scientists and sport and exercise science researchers in the UK, and they control all the research that is done. And they have a code of conduct which all researchers must abide by when doing a study or doing research. This code of conduct includes data protection, ethical clearance, informed consent, professional conduct, and competence. Ethical clearance is a process that a researcher has to put their proposed piece of research through. So they'll have to fill out a ethical clearance form and submit it to an appropriate body. So this could be tutors, college or university ethics committee. The committee will then look at the proposal and the form in a lot of detail, and if the proposal is okay, then the committee will clear the proposal and the research will be able to go ahead. If the proposal isn't okay and they disagree with points that are in the form, then the form will be sent back and the researcher will have to resubmit it, and they'll go through the same process again. So first, in this test, the scenario is the effect of interval training on blood lactate values. In this test, the participants are a team of professional hockey players. They are sprinting 100 metres and then having a small blood sample taken, and this is then followed by a 45-second rest period, and they are repeating this process 5 times. The blood taken is being tested for blood lactate levels, and the results are then being stored on a computer. However, if the results are stored incorrectly and not kept safe enough, then there could be a data protection issue, as they could be hacked easily and leaked to the internet. And this would be an issue if it was leaked with their names on it, as it would be readily available to other teams competing against them in their leagues, and the opposition teams would be able to see how the participants were performing in this test, and could use the data to tailor their own game plan and training, so to get a performance advantage over the participants in matches. And the leaking of this research and information could lead to the researcher being sued by the athletes and could be suspended or banned from research by BASES. Taking blood could cause a safety issue if it isn't done properly by a qualified medical professional, so that the blood is being taken in the correct way. Otherwise, injury or harm could be caused to the participants of the test, and if injury or harm is caused, then it could have a detrimental effect on the team's performance in their league or in the test, particularly as if one player was harmed or having blood taken, then the coach could then say that they didn't want anyone else having their blood taken because they needed their team to be fit for the match, and this would result in the research not being able to be completed properly. And the coach could also report the research to BASES if they found that the person taking blood wasn't qualified to take blood, and then they could be called to a tribunal or temporarily suspended from research until the incident had been investigated further. A form detailing how the test would be run and specifying that blood would be taken 5 times and that there is a small risk that a scar or bruise could be left as a result of blood being taken, and this form would need to be signed by both the players and the coaches, because the players are professionals, so would need coach or manager's consent. And if this doesn't happen and the client did pick up a small injury, or if the coach wasn't aware that the players were taking part in the test and the players all went into their training sessions with small injuries and not being able to train properly, then the coaches could report the researcher to BASES. for malpractice, and they could then be banned or suspended from research. A medical professional should be used to take the blood, as it is something that can cause harm if it isn't carried out correctly, and this means that there is a higher chance that the test will be performed correctly, and they'll be able to tell the coach and the participants just before the blood is taken that if they want, they can withdraw it from the test at any point if they are in pain or they want to for any other reason. Otherwise, it could be taken to bases by the coach or a participant, and they can say that the research wasn't carried out in a professional or appropriate way, which could lead to the researcher being sent a letter of warning from bases about their conduct and upholding the reputation of sports science. The second scenario is to do with the effects of punishment on performance of basketball free throw percentages. In this test, 5 10-year-old participants are repeatedly taking free throws and are being given verbal abuse by a coach every time they take a shot. If they miss a shot, then they are forced to do a lap of the court. So psychological safety could be an issue with this test, as the constant verbal abuse and bullying could cause long-term psychological damage to the participants. And if it was later discovered that the test had caused long-term damage, then the participants or their families could sue the researcher or report them to bases. Informed consent could be an issue in this test, as the participants' parents would need to be informed that there's a risk their child could be psychologically harmed if they participated in the test, and the exact method of the test would need to be detailed on the form, and the parents should be given the opportunity to withdraw their children from the test at any time. And again, if this didn't happen, then the parents could report the research to bases, and it would then go to a tribunal, or the researcher could be suspended from research. Ethicality could be an issue in this test, so the researcher would need to get ethical clearance from their uni or college ethics committee, and they would need to prove that all the equipment and facilities were safe to use, say who their participants were and why they were using that group of people, and have a detailed method which would be sent to the ethics committee for review. The issue here would be with the group of people being used for the test, as it is easy to cause psychological harm to a young child, and if the committee thought that this was a big enough problem to stop the research, then they would tell the researcher and they would have to review their research plan. And data protection could be an issue. If the participants' names are published in the finished article, this would mean that personal information is available to the world, and the parents didn't agree to that in their consent form, and as a result the parent could report the research to bases, and they would then be sent a letter either suspending them from research, calling them to a tribunal, or telling them that the parents are suing the researcher. The third scenario is about the effectiveness of PNF training, PNF flexibility training in young gymnasts. So this test involves 10 male and female gymnasts aged between 12 and 14 who will participate in a sit and reach test, and then will undertake 6 weeks of PNF training focusing on the hamstrings, and at the end of the 6 weeks they will do another sit and reach test to see whether the training has had the desired effect and made the hamstrings more flexible. The biggest issue with this test would be physical safety, due to the fact that the stretching involved in PNF training can cause harm and injury, such as a pulled, strained or torn hamstring, which can be very painful and take a long time to heal. And as a result of the injury, the parents of the participants could report the researchers to bases for malpractice, and could result in the suspension from research, or the researcher being sued. Professional conduct could also be an issue, as during the training the coaches would need to stay professional so that they know what's happening physiologically and so that they don't cause injury to the participants. If conduct is unprofessional, then it could cause injury, and this would result in the researcher being suspended from research by BASES. Informed consent would be another issue, as the parents would need to sign the consent form and need to be made aware that there is a risk of injury to their child. Otherwise, if the child got injured during the training, then the parents could report the research to BASES, and they could be taken to a tribunal or sent a letter containing a fine. And another big issue with this test could be data protection, as the parents will not have given permission for their child's names to be published in the final document. So if they were published, then the parents could sue the researcher, and the researcher would be banned by BASES. The fourth and final scenario is about an investigation about the role of cold vests in aiding recovery from maximal sprint intervals. And this test involves 10 male and female rugby players doing 50-metre maximal sprints, then resting for 1 minute, and this will be repeated 10 times, and blood lactate tests will be taken at the end of the 10 rounds of the test. The following day, the test will be done again, but this time during the recovery periods, the participants will wear cold vests to try to see whether they do aid the recovery from maximal sprint intervals. But this means that safety could be an issue for the researcher, as the cold vests could cause harm to the participants, such as hypothermia. Another issue could be informed consent, as the researcher would need to inform the participants that they could experience discomfort and possible hypothermia. Data protection could be a further issue for the researcher, as the participants wouldn't have given permission for their names to be published in the final report. And professional conduct could also be an issue in the test, as the researcher would need to make sure that the cold vests were kept cold and at the right temperature, and that the participants knew how to use and wear the cold vests properly. And if any of these issues weren't dealt with correctly, or there wasn't further issue from them, then the research could be reported to BASES by the participant, and from there they could be taken to a tribunal, sent a fine, suspended, banned, or sued by the participants.